Welcome back to the Forensics Detailing channel. In this video we're going to be going through and discussing all the different types of machine polishers and giving you the key information so that you can make an informed decision on what's the right machine polisher for you. Okay guys, so I'm going to attempt to answer the question that I get asked a lot about what machine polisher guys that are looking to get into this and take the plunge into the machine polishing world should buy. Now I think there's almost a feeling out there that you kind of got to get this right, and you know, if you get the wrong machine you're missing out on something, you know, you're missing out on that sweet kind of results that we all want. And it's not quite that simple, but there are little pluses and minuses and little advantages and disadvantages to each machine. I'm going to try and cover those in this video. So let's start with the free spinning dual action polishers. So the plate, as we've said before, is not mounted in the centre of bearing, it's mounted on an offset, an 8mm offset with this. So as the main axle rotates, it generates kind of rotation on the actual plate, so it spins the plate around as well as the actual kind of rolling around like that. So you get two forms of movement, and we'll draw up what that looks like on the board because it's really important. Now the first thing to say is why does that make this particular tool safe? Well, with anything, the thing that's moving the abrasive the most is the rotation of the plate. Okay, so if you imagine this little point, imagine this as an abrasive sitting on this pad. As it goes around this whole circle, if you unravelled that circle into a straight line, you'd have travelled the abrasives, was it pi r squared or something, whatever the circumference formula is, but you'll have moved the abrasive a fair old distance, okay? And that's the thing that affects it most. It's the thing that creates the most travel on the abrasive, the distance that it covers over time, or else the speed. Now with other tools, obviously you've got that same thing where you're working that abrasive around with speed, but you can also add pressure into that equation. When you add pressure into the equation with this, you slow the plate down to the point where it will stall out, or if you lean over, you know, you're not level, or you're trying to put extra pressure on the edges from curves, the plate will slow down and stall out. So because of that reason, you can't really utilize pressure in the same way you can with this machine, but also because the spin is generated from the actual rotation of the axle, the actual rotation speeds are relatively slow on this. So what you're actually doing is working the compound slightly differently to how you would work it on a rotary polisher. So if we just quickly draw this up on the board, what it kind of looks like on the panel, on the pad, when you're using these machines. So if we just pick one particular point rather than the whole footprint of abrasives, if you like, you're more likely to get something like this. And depending, it's never going to be like a perfect little consistent pattern, this, because depending on the speed that the plate is spinning is going to affect these loops. In fact, the loops will occur when the plate is virtually still, and then that is actually representing the actual main axle turning. When the plate starts to spin, you start going off down here. So you get this little kind of loopy thing going on. The main reason why that's useful to understand as well is when you do use pressure, you stop the plate turning, you are literally just working the abrasives like a kind of orbital, which means you're not really moving the abrasives that far. And if you're using pressure, and that's the reason the plate's stalling, you're going to generate all that energy that the machine's putting out is going into the pad, really, as it's kind of scrubbing over the surface, and you can cook the pads if you're using them wrong. So typically with these free spinning dual action polishers, you want to keep them moving, keep them spinning, light pressure, and be very careful when you're kind of polishing over curved areas with them where they're more prone to stalling out. Why is the main reason that people are getting directed to these? Well, no matter how you use these machines, guys, you crank them up to full whack if you like. It's not the best way to use them, but no matter what you do with them, you can only really work the abrasives so hard. So they give you almost like an upper limit of where you can go, and that upper limit stops all the risks around overheating paintwork and introducing kind of buffer trowels and stuff like that. The negatives with that is the capability they give you to cut paint is lower than some of these other machines. So if you're having to do a lot of correction where you're lowering the level of an entire car, the clear coat of an entire car, taking out swell damage, and it's hard, tough clear coat and stuff like that, these machines can be quite hard work. But for the guys at home, you know, like me as well, that are not doing too much of this, really the difference in capability between these and these, it's not insignificant. But if you're only doing one car and you know that's it, you're done for the next 2 years or whenever you want to polish it again, it doesn't really make much difference. The other advantage is that these machines are cheap. You can swap the plates around. They typically come with a 5 and 6 inch plate, and you can put the little 3.5 inch plate on them, and those smaller plates and pads are quite useful for doing tighter areas or smaller curvy areas, you know, bumpers and all that sort of stuff, like these mini polishers here. The downside is it's a bit of a pain in the arse when you're doing this polishing, pardon my French, to take the plates off and then adjust the counterbalance weight, because all these plates are offset on the axle. You have to have a weight to counterbalance it in the other direction. Change the weight of the plate, you've got to change the weight of the counterbalance, or you can get a bit too much vibration, which also affects how the plate spins. So it's not really ideal, you know, if you're in the trade, to just have one tool and be swapping plates around. It would slow you down too much. At home, you could probably live with it as long as you approached it and tackled it properly, got all the main areas done, decided what you're going to need the small area, you know, the small plate for, and then do those in another sort of stage afterwards, if you like, so you haven't got to keep swapping the plate around. So that is your DAS6 Pro. Very, very safe. The downside perhaps is when you're needing to do a lot of correction, it's not the most capable tool in that sense. In terms of end results though, guys, there is nothing really this tool can't deliver that the other tools can. It's just how quickly you're going to get there ultimately. Right, next I want to move on to the long throw machines. So at some point after people figured out you could use these to machine polish, the longer throw, so the offset of where they mount the pallet plate on the free spinning bearing. Rupes, I think, although they didn't invent it, it's fair to say they kind of made it popular and pioneered it and took it to the kind of detailing scene more. So the long throw machines have a longer offset, typically 12 millimeters, 15 millimeters and 21 millimeters. The longer that offset is, the more aggressive that machine is, the larger the orbit. Perhaps a little bit more vibration and wobble when you get out there. You're asking the kind of pads and plates to do a little bit more as they fly around. The advantage of the longer machines, of the longer throw machines, is you get a little bit, raises the capability of the machine, the scrub, so you can get a little bit more cut out of them pound for pound than the smaller throw counterparts. The recommendation typically, I'd say, is go for the 15mm throw. That's what most people do. The 21mm throws, you know, they're still great tools, but they're just a little bit kind of haywire, a little bit less accurate. Perhaps if you've got a specific requirement to cover larger areas, that tool might be more suitable, but typically the 15 or even the 12 is the way to go. So we have the Rupes 15mm throw here. Now one disadvantage with the long throw machines is they tend to only support proprietary plates, and those plate sizes are typically 125mm and 150mm, and I would recommend that you go with a 125mm plate with them. They're just a little bit easier to handle, less prone to stall. The bigger size is obviously better for covering more ground, but that's the easy bit, covering the nice flat panels in this. The harder bit is the rest of the car, where it takes a little bit more time. So these tools, these long throw tools, that's the disadvantage. You can't put small plates on them. So you typically need an accompanying tool to support it and do what you could do on the DAS6 Pro with the smaller plates. So more compact tools, slightly lighter weight tools, and typically they support the 3-inch plates and the sort of 4-inch pads, or 75mm plate, 80-inch pads. That's the best way to think of it. Which one of these two options should you really look at you know, as your first set of tool? Well, the number one thing that's going to play a role in that is budget. Some guys want to dip their toe into machine polishing, but they've got a certain amount of money to throw at it, and they might only want to throw sort of 100 quid at the machine, 50 quid for polishers and pads. If you are on a budget, almost certainly you want to go with the DAS6 Pro. If you are just doing this to get your car looking nice and it's your own car, you're going to get that car nice, own it for a few years, sell it, get another car, and that car that you get you might want to make look nice as well. You might be polishing 1 or 2 times a year. You might do, you might do a friend's car or a family car and stuff, and this tool will be great for that. If you are doing more of this, if you are in the trade and you're having to correct clear coat every day or even once a week or something like that, you are probably going to want the extra capability to cut a bit more rapidly that these long throw machines give you. So that's why you would lean towards these tools. The disadvantage is, realistically, to get the most out of this particular long throw, you need to accompany it with another tool. Not really, you could still be just, there's a lot of guys that use these machines and they won't put the small plates on them, and they might just want this machine instead. You're not going to be able to hit all of the areas efficiently with this particular tool, but you can still do a good job of making your car nice with it. Depends on what level you want to go. I think if people are really into their detailing, you see a lot of these nice videos on Facebook and stuff of all these other tools and people hitting tight areas, and you feel like you're missing out if you haven't got that particular tooling, and you probably are missing out. But every time you invest in another tool, if it's a quality one, that could be another 200, 300 quid not down the pan, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It's a big expenditure. So that is your long throw machines versus your standard DAS6 Pro. Right, the next thing I want to go on to is the rotary polisher. So the rotary polisher is a relatively simple machine with a motor, gearing which drives an axle, and a plate which is fixed to that axle. Now, why are these rotary polishers, why do they get a bad rap? Well, they're sometimes called, or often called, high-speed rotary polishers, because they're capable of rotating the plate at very high speeds. This particular machine here, DeWalt 849X, sorry, it's late in the evening, my brain's shutting down. It has a minimum full spigometry of 600 RPM and a maximum of 3,500. So its minimum speed, 600 RPM, that is 10 rotations per second, unless I've done a brain fart. That's 10 rotations per second, isn't it? So if we think we've got a standard, say, 5.5 inch plate on this pad, this abrasive particle here is going to get rotated 10 times in a second. If you unravel that and think of the distance that you've then made the abrasive particle travel in that second, the distance is going to be huge in comparison with the path of that abrasive on the dual action polisher, which is kind of going like this, if you unravel that because of the rotation speed being low, I don't know as a fraction what it would be. Obviously depends on what speeds you're running these at as well, but it would be very small compared to the distance that you make the abrasives travel on the rotary. So because the rotary polisher can effectively move abrasives over the surface a lot quicker, travelling more distance, over time than the other machines, it has the capability to correct, the clear coat quicker. The problem with that is there's a tipping point, and because also the rotary is the drive is forced, you can use pressure as well, so more pressure on those abrasives. The speed of the abrasives and the pressure you're putting them down, we know that creates heat, and when you get to a certain point you start raising the temperature of the clear coat very quickly at high speeds, and that's what causes the buffer troughs. In combination with this, areas of the car where there's less clear coat laid down or less paintwork laid down, it's much easier to go through those particular areas. In the same way it's easier to go through them if you're wet sanding over a raised edge as well. In the same way, when you're using a rotary at high speeds with high pressure, with aggressive compounds, you can go through the edges. If you compare that to something like the Flex 3401, its maximum speed that you can crank up to only generates 480 off the top of my head, I think that's right, 480 rotations per minute. That's at full whack. So the rotary at its lowest speed typically is more aggressive than the 3401. I know there's some other factors in this. As soon as I'm saying it, there's some other factors because you've got a bit of scrub created with this as well. But typically a rotary at 600 RPM is more aggressive than the 3401 at top whack. although they're comparable. But it just gives you an idea, and as soon as you start cranking up and getting closer to 1,000, you're getting way above the capability of what the other machines can do. The problem is when you're up in that zone where you're working at those sorts of speeds, heat, as well as not only kind of burning the clear coat if you're really going hell for leather, the biggest problem with it is just A, cooking the pads out, which is slightly less of a problem on the Rotary, but B, drying the abrasive compounds out and sort of dusting them up very quickly and stuff like that. So a lot of the problems that you get around the Rotary are all related to just using it at higher speeds. And really anything above 1,000 RPMs, those problems can become more and more prevalent. You know, bearing in mind arm speed and pressure can affect it, but typically above 1,000 RPMs, you've got to be mindful of it. At 600 RPMs or 700 RPMs, this tool is very, very civilized, very, very smooth and very easy to use. And with good quality abrasives, especially diminishing abrasives, you are not going to put holograms in the clear coat with the Rotary polisher at those speeds. And you'll find it when you first get a Rotary in your hand and put it on the panel, like we did with the video with Reg, it feels a little bit strange, a little bit harder. It will pull you around when it's not level and stuff like that. You can get used to that very, very quickly, and then just start using the Rotary at very, very low speeds. And if you do that, it's a really, really good tool to start, to use to polish clear coat. It's not difficult to control. This one's a bit heavy, and I'm going to be investing in a better one soon, the Flex PE8-4 because the weight is starting to affect an old git like me. But it's a very, very nice tool. The other advantage with the Rotary, beyond its ability to correct clear coat rapidly, and all of these machines can polish clear coat, with no problems. These abrasives will deliver you certain levels of finish. And I know there's a lot of talk of finesse and stuff like that in detailing, but pretty much in terms of how these machines polish and work those very fine abrasives, they can all work them suitably well to max out your gloss, in my opinion. Pretty sure I might even do a video on that, seeing which one I can max the gloss out. I bet you there's no difference between all of them. There is one other big advantage that the Rotary polisher has over all of these other offerings, is that typically if you had to have one machine that could do the lot, it would be the Rotary polisher. You can stick these extension bars on there to give you reach to get into tight areas. I could put 1-inch spot pads on this DeWalt machine, because it's still, when you're using smaller pads, you need higher speed. So the Flex Compact Rotary that's designed for the small plates operates at very high speeds for those, but the DeWalt still has the capability to go up there. The only problem with using it as a compact mini is it's not compact and it's not mini, it's massive and it's heavy. So using it in tight areas is a bit of a pain. So it's nice to have the mini tool. But you could, in theory, if you had like the PE14-2, that one machine with extension bars and a range of different plate sizes, pretty much do the lot, guys. Finally, our forced rotation dual action polisher, the 3401, and there's other offerings of them now, the Rupes Millet and the Vertool and all that sort of stuff. Why do I love this tool? First of all, what is it? So it's a free spinning DA where the plate is actually running around a track, so it can't spin. Its rotation is set through a gearing on the track. So when we go back to our geometry, we don't have the little loops because the plate can never stop to create that loop. It's always moving. So you get your in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. That looks like shit, but it's something like that. Okay, so you get your spider's web thing. The cool thing about the 3401 is you get the consistency there, so you don't ever have to worry about the plate stall with it. So you can use this machine, you can put it into slightly kind of recessed areas where the other ones are going to stall out, and it will just keep going and keep going. Now you still have to be mindful of kind of pressure and how you use the tool with the 3401, but it solves that particular problem. And you can even sort of angle and lean in a little bit with it if you like. The thing that they say with it is it's the push me pull you factor that makes it perhaps less friendly for when you're starting up, that the machine can pull you around a little bit, and it can, but its ability to pull you around is really based on the size of the pad. And I don't use this with large pads because I find that push and pull a pain in the culo, a pain in the arse. So I use it with a very specific pad that you can't get your hands on anymore, and it's a joy to use with that particular pad, and it doesn't push you around and pull you around at all, and it cuts really well, and I can get into virtually everything. There's virtually nothing well, let's be careful, steady on there, John. I can polish 95% of the car with the Flex 3401 and the 5-inch Lake Country pads, and that's why I love it, and it's so smooth and I'm not getting pulled around. Do I sometimes want to use the rotary instead? Yeah, I do, because I use it in a very similar way, and that's a very basic way at slow speeds. It's pretty much just as easy. One thing, even with the rotary at 600 RPM, it's obviously travelling faster than these other tools, so there's a more tendency for it to sling, you know, product around. If you overuse product, if there's any little puddles of product or trails, and it flicks it, or if you've got excess product in the pad and you compress it, or you're using water to revive polishes, then the tendency to sling product around on the rotaries is a lot higher. But in summary, the 3401, I do find it is kind of like a halfway house between the dual action polishers and, you know, the free spinning dual action polishers and the rotary, and I just love it. So that is why I love it. You do probably, with the 3401, you probably do need to pair it up to hit the very tight areas with, and I pair it up with this little compact rotary, because there are no mini forced rotation dual action polishers as far as I know. So that is it, guys. This is quite a long video, but there's a lot of information in there which is important and will hopefully help you when you're picking your first type of polisher. The key points are, guys, consider your budget, consider how much of this you're going to be doing, consider some of the things I've told you about, the different dynamics between the machines, and let that kind of guide you. If in doubt, the old DAS6 Pro is always a good starting point. And I will link in all the machines that I kind of favour. Everyone's slightly different. Like I say, there is no right or wrong, but hopefully this has given you a little bit more information about where you might want to go in terms of your machine polisher choice. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you on the Forensics Detailing channel soon.
Where was I?